Genesis House, FirstNet, built with AT&T, and the Friends in Recovery podcast are proud to bring you Answering the Call, the First Responders podcast. Join your hosts,
Podfather, Jersey Ed,
and Noontime with Skylar Noon,
as they address the real issues of first responders' health and wellness, from physical and mental health to relationships and work-life balance. Answering the Call, the First Responders podcast, is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube, as well as iHeartRadio, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your friends in recovery answering the call.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Answering the Call, the First Responders podcast, sponsored by FirstNet, built by AT&T. I am the podfather, Mike Miles.
Jersey Ed, guys.
And it's Noontime with Sky.
That smile.
ATC, guys. I'm here live with the podfather.
That's right. Ed and I are live. We're here up in Studio C, and we have a special guest today. We'll get to him in a minute.
Yeah.
Matthew Sheehan. Look at that smile. Matt.
Do you want to tell everybody how they can get a hold of us? Friends, ATC, Answering the Call. If you want to get a hold of us, help at friendsinrecoverypodcast.com. Send us an email if you'd like to be a guest, just as Matt is today. Or if you have any questions or anything, or anything for the Podfather, help at friendsinrecoverypodcast.com. Or you can even call us at 617-379-1163. That is not a helpline. That's just the line for the podcast. Right. So please don't call that if you're looking for help. So at 617-379-1163.
Correct. And we'll give out a helpline later.
We will, absolutely, yeah. And Scott has a little bit about our Facebook page.
Yeah, so Genesis House has a Facebook page, and attached to that page is a private group, and it's called the Friends in Recovery Community Support. We have a Friends in Recovery podcast page and a Answering the Call First Responders podcast page as well. So definitely come join in with us, and we always stay engaged with each other. So it's a good community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great community.
Yep. So you have a guest for us, Podfather.
We do.
Podfather's been getting guests, man. I think you guys are kind of pushing. Look, you're pushing me out. Look, here you go. These guys.
Not easy. Not easy. We're trying.
You have a good guest. We got to chat a little with him before, and it's like he's a brother already. So
yeah. Matt and I go way back. Matthew and I actually we served on a school committee together several years ago. And 2 terms for me. I think you had 4 terms. Was it 4?
No, we did. I did 3. I had 3.
Seemed, but Matt and I would have these. He was a young guy when he first came on the school committee.
He's a young guy now. Jesus Christ!
Well,
thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's very nice of you.
But we hit it off pretty good, and we hired about 3 or 4 superintendents. It was a very tumultuous, difficult time. This is when they started the food program in schools, and we were throwing away about $800 worth of food a day. And everybody thought that was great, but that's what we did. And we figured it out, and we had a pretty good time there. Matt's also on the he's also on the housing committee out in Drake, Massachusetts. Kids does more for community service than anyone I know. And he's well liked in the town. He's elected. He's got the name. He's also a dispatcher for the Lowell Police Department. And that's where
this comes in.
Answering the call. That's right.
He's answering the call for us.
Yep.
Literally.
Lowell's a pretty big city. It's a very multicultural city. It's the second largest Southeast Asian community in the country. Wonderful people. There's problems in every city, but Lowell's a very, very busy city, and it can be busy. So Matt, tell us about your job as a dispatcher.
Like Mike, like you just said, the city of Lowell is the 4th largest city in the state of Massachusetts. Us alone in Lowell, we answer about over 100,000 calls every year. Yeah. Whether that be, a combination of 911 calls or what they consider business line calls that come into the building. There's 100,000+ residents in the city, and like you said, Mike, the city is very multicultural, which has its ups and its goods and its bads. Like you were just saying, I've been with the police department for about 10 years now. I actually started down in intake, booking prisoners, and I made my way up to what we consider the radio room, your 911 center. And for the last, I think probably 4 or 5 years now, I've been on the day shift as the lead dispatcher.
That's a busy position.
It is.
Yeah. I bet. You had said as far as working on that shift, all 100,000 calls a year. That's crazy. And here's the thing, you can't make many mistakes. I mean, you know, if you stand up 100,000 times, you might even fall over a couple of times or trip forwards or backwards. But as a dispatcher, especially nowadays, everything's recorded. You cannot make a mistake. Is that correct, Matthew?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know, just to your point right there, everything's recorded. Everything's recorded. All of our phone calls are recorded. Your keystrokes are recorded in the computer. Things that you put into the computer, all that stuff's recorded. You know, it's kind of like, so this whole podcast, you know, for the first responder, like a 911 dispatcher is the first responder.
Yes.
Like they're the first person on scene to get the details, give those details to, you know, whoever, police, fire, EMS.
Sure.
You know, because Mike, you know, as a retired police officer, you depend on what, you know, the guys and girls in the radio room tell you as to what you're pulling into.
Back in the 70s, when I got out of the Army, I was a dispatcher. I was hired on a government grant. There was several of us hired. We all became cops. You know, we all were interested in law enforcement. Most of us were veterans. But back then it was different. There was the old pull switchboard. It was two guys, you know, telling the public basically, you know, if we had time to listen, we'd listen. But, you know, we weren't that professional is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
When I walk into the communications module at the police department, which is high tech and it's just a wonderful place with so many bodies, I wonder, you know, like I'm like, communications come so far. You get trained, Matt? You do a lot of trainings?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, in the state of Massachusetts, you have to go what they consider like a 911 academy. And that's 5 weeks long. And then we do even more training in-house. And that's part of my gig, you know, at the police department is that you know, anybody that wants to come into the 911 communication center, be a dispatcher, you know, they sit with me for, I want to say probably months, 2 to 3 months before they even answer a phone call.
Right. Wow. So you guys are like and I like how you put it, you're the first responders, basically. Right. So the information that comes in from me as a civilian, say I had an emergency or whatever, you have to hear all that. You have to process all that. You have to understand it. And you have to, it could be something, a really bad emergency, really bad accident. You have to calm those people down. You have to figure out how to get all information from them and then give it to somebody like Mike. And that has to take a lot of toll on you also, hearing all that. I mean, just understanding all that. And maybe the guys in the field don't understand. I don't know. I mean, you know, you guys, maybe the guys in the field don't understand that and how a trauma trigger that could be, or how trauma causing it could be.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, what we see a lot now is, like I call them the younger kids, like the younger generation that are just getting out of the academy and things like that. Like a lot of these guys and girls started off as in communications, like 911 dispatchers, so they know what it's like, you know, to answer that call, to relay that information to the guys and the girls on the street. So that really, I think that really helps police officers. So just to get an understanding of, you know, what they go through in the communication center and how it gets on the street.
And I really think in my career anyways, you know, from 75 until 2015, as a civilian and as a policeman, you know, I've seen a lot of changes. And what's most important to me is that dispatchers, communications people are finally being recognized as somebody that has the same post-traumatic stress, the same anxiety, the same depression, the same addiction, everything that a cop has, you know, experiences as far as having, you know, a malady or some type of stress after being on the job several years. I don't think anyone back in the day were thinking that this might affect the dispatchers, the first responders of the first responders, you know? Right. So I think now that we understand that this can be it's a very strenuous, very stressful job. Have you ever delivered any children, Matt, over the phone? Have you ever?
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, I have. You know, when you hear the person, you know, that you'll hear. Usually, it's a guy on the other end of the line going. I can see the head, and you're like, "Oh boy, here we go." You know, it's like, you're like, "Here we go."
Too late for the breathing.
Yeah. Like, listen, buddy, get some shoelaces and a new pair of shoes because you're gonna need them. Like, it's gonna get messy. All right. Oh yeah.
Get your feet wet. So, you know what I was thinking is Ed was saying, you know, like this is the stuff you have to hear. And for me, like my auditory processing is terrible. So like for me, like to hear all that in someone's terror voice, that's a lot too. That right there alone is stress. And then if I didn't hear, am I beating myself up because I didn't catch what they said before the call disconnected? So it is a lot of stress, I think, on you guys. And like I said, when you like taking it in, processing, and then where am I routing the call to? You know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, you only have, a couple of minutes to, assess actually what's going on. Like, what is that person calling in for? And then to what, you and I might not be an emergency is an emergency to that person on the other end of the phone. Just everybody deals with everything, crises differently. And like I said, somebody, I don't know, if a dog got hit by a car or something like that, to you and I, it might not be a big thing, but that person in that moment in time is just, life-altering emergency for them.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Trauma can come in any form, man. And
absolutely.
Perception.
How do you take care of yourself? How do you deal with that? How do you debrief yourself? I mean, you have to probably debrief yourself every day, I'm guessing. I mean, after hearing all that stuff. I mean, because you can't get callous to it because you have to be a human being also to that human being that's in distress. You have to be stern, I'm guessing, but you also have to have empathy and sympathy for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, like I said, part of my position that, I do the training for the new dispatch and things like that. And one of the biggest things is compassion. Like I would hope that everybody would talk to whoever else is on the other end of the line, like they would talk to their grandmother or their grandfather. I think that's a big thing. Like empathy is a big, big thing because, like I said, to my point before, the smallest thing to us is huge to somebody on the other end of the line.
Yeah.
And like to your point, it's just a phone call and then you go on to the next one and then the next one and then the next one. Sometimes, just a simple walk for like 5 or 10 minutes or something like that, just whatever. Talking to your neighbors, just looking around. Like before we started this, like my dog Baxter, I'm telling you, coming home to see that tail wagging, it's just everything goes away. The dog's awesome. Like, the dog is absolutely, I mean, he hates me right now because we're going through obedience school. Other than that, but coming home and, just kicking those shoes off. And I think one of the biggest things, and I like to tell everybody, whatever happens during the day stays at the threshold of the door before you go into the parking lot.
Yeah.
Stays there.
I know Matt pretty well, and I've known him pretty well, since we met on the school committee. And he ended up coming to work at the police department. Before I was retired, he was still there. And, it's just, he walks the walk. So what he's taught, he's a very nice person. He's a very giving. Just think, holding 2 positions in a town, 30,000 people, I believe. And just always putting your name out there, because if things are good, you're up here. If things are bad, they equate it with your name. But great to his folks, his family, just a great guy, And I really believe that, perfect for a job like that, because not high strung, not eager to, a lot of people get this job and they want to move on faster. They're not really paying attention, and they might make a mistake or two, And I'm not saying Matt's never made a mistake, but I guarantee you it's been very few. Yeah, very few.
Matt, the other thing too is the podfather and I've been doing this show. I've been working with first responders for years now. And along with Mike, I've known Mike for over 10 years now. And we've helped a lot of cops and a lot of firefighters and a lot of EMT people. And I was at a conference in Boise, actually Snake River Canyon, Idaho. Okay. And you can see the Snake River Canyon out of this conference center of, it was called the First Responders Conference. And I got an eye opener at that conference about dispatchers. They said, the one woman said, "You got to watch this dispatcher. I'm like, a dispatcher? Right? They answer a fucking phone. They answer a phone call. So we have to be careful for cursing on here. But I curse all the time. But so I'm like, all right, well, I'll listen to it. It was 2 women up there. I'm like, oh my God, 2 women. By the end of what they shared, I was crying. I couldn't believe they played a call. They played a call of I think the husband shooting his wife, like the wife is in the bathroom. That was unbelievable what I heard. I was shaken up. Now that was a recorded call 5 years before that, and I'm sitting at a conference listening to it. I was shaken up. Now that stuff that you have to deal with, I'm sure. I mean, if 100,000 phone calls a year.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I said, we deal with it every day, and some are good, some are bad, and some are absolutely horrible. I mean, not to go into detail, but I've taken, probably a half a dozen calls that will just stick with you for the rest of your life. Like, I'd close my eyes, tell you what time it was, who was sitting in the room with me, what everybody was actually doing. But what I ate yesterday, I have no idea. But something like that, and there's probably like a half a dozen. And there are, like I said, I think there's 26 of us that work for the city of Lowell, 26 dispatchers. And again, if you asked all 26, they would have that call. Like, that's what they call it. Like, it's that call. Yeah. Like, and it just sticks with you. And what people all don't realize too is sometimes you have to relive that whole thing when you have to go to court.
Oof.
Because when things go to trial, not only do they call the police officer in, but they'll call the 911 operator because they're the first person of contact. So, if Matt Sheehan calls 911 and he does something extremely horrible, and then Matt Sheehan's on the stand, who was Matt Sheehan? Well, I spoke to him. Is this his voice? Is this your voice? You have to relive the entire thing. And like what Mike said earlier is finally, states are starting to classify 911 communications as first responders. They're getting into the police and fire retirement system, just like the sworn officers and the firefighters are. But I mean, slowly but surely. I mean, Massachusetts, they're just lagging behind. Hopefully, they pick up the pace and we can get somewhere in this state. But I mean, there was some talk 2 years ago on the federal level of just doing it, all throughout the entire country, but that fell by the wayside. But I mean, hopefully, in the next couple of years, they're on the same playing field with everybody else in police and fire.
Yeah.
Well, I've done both jobs, and that's the other thing too. Years ago, the fire department had their own dispatch, and then they conjoined as a result of budget cuts or whatever, and I think it's great to know what's going on because, we just had a fire in Lowell yesterday. Excuse me. How many people died? One or two?
One. We've had two bad fires in the same week in the city.
And I mean, I just went by one of them on Westford Street on the way here to my office. And, those third floor apartments, those multi-dwellings, when those fires are going, I've been there. And usually the cops are the first ones there because you're out on patrol. You're not in a fire station. So you can get there a lot quicker. And when you get there, you need to know what you're doing. You can't just jump around and say, oh, what do I do? You got to act right away. Someone's in the canal. You got to act. You have to do things. Right. But it's the same thing with communications. When people call, they're not like, hello, how are you? Yes, well, I need the police.
Yeah, no, it's traumatic.
Yeah.
They're speaking different language you don't know. So it is a very stressful job. Yeah. Hey, Matt, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back. This is the Podfather answering the call. First Responders Podcast.
You're first. First to respond. First to put others' lives before your own. And in an emergency, you need a network that puts you first. That connects you to technology, to each other, and to other agencies. Built with and for first responders. FirstNet, the only congressionally authorized wireless network for first responders. Because putting you first is our job.
Since 1992, Genesis House has been helping real people heal from addiction on their private recovery campus in beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida. Their family-owned program is accredited by the Joint Commission and offers detox and dual diagnosis treatment in a comfortable and confidential setting. At Genesis House, they focus on treating the underlying causes of addiction. Their comprehensive approach includes psychiatric care, individual and small group therapy, trauma healing techniques, and holistic care including yoga, massage, and animal-assisted therapy. After treatment, their clients enjoy the lifelong support of a nationwide network of Genesis House alumni. Call Genesis House today at 1-800-737-0933 to speak with someone who understands. Visit them on the web at www.genesishouse.net. It's time to start your journey to a long and successful recovery.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Answering the call, the First Responders Podcast. I am the Podfather. Oh, excuse me. The First Responders Podcast, sponsored by FirstNet, built by AT&T.
There you go, Podfather.
And I am the Podfather,
Yes,
and
you
you
are.
are Jersey Ed, and we have
Noontime with Sky.
Noontime with Sky.
That we're talking communications here, Podfather.
Yeah, she's like a dispatcher.
She's like a dispatcher,
Sure.
but I wanted to bring up the FirstNet built by AT&T real
Yes.
quick. That is an amazing amazing system that they have. I know we always talk about this, but here's a dispatcher. Here's somebody who's in communications with us here on the show, and we have a FirstNet built by AT&T sponsoring us for this very reason right here.
Direct example.
Right
yeah. Matt, has Lowell been involved with FirstNet built by AT&T?
That I'm not 100% sure of. I mean, in police communications, I mean, stuff's changing every day.
Right.
Just about a year ago, we just got a text to 911. So now people can text in.
Wow.
Just via their text message, like, hey, just punch in 911. If they're in the city limits, it'll come directly to us.
Wow.
When it comes to like police and fire communications, it's weird because a lot of stuff starts out west and then works its way to this side of the country. Because text to 911 was huge out in like the West Coast, like California, Oregon, all that stuff years ago. And like I said, it finally trickled its way up here. And then pretty soon, from what I'm being told, is you'll be able to like send a video in to 911.
Oh my God.
So maybe what you could do is when you have a moment, and I'll remind you, when you go back, speak to the communications at the fire and yourself and find out if FirstNet built by AT&T has been either offered or if they're understanding what it is. Yeah. And then we'll have you on again and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, it's a great communication system. I do, Podfather. Yeah, I do have something to talk about. I just wanted to get down because I love that FirstNet stuff. It's just amazing that there's a separate communications for you guys. It's just amazing. So, so everything we're talking about, you kind of, there's a lot of stress going on. There's a lot of trauma, what you're going to listen to, and some of the dispatchers that are listening, or anybody that's listening, especially cops. We have a phone number. It's copline.org. That is the website. You can go there, or you can call 1-800-COP-LINE. That's 1-800-267-5463. That's 1-800-267-5463, and that is manned by over 100 police officers, volunteer police officers, to help you through anything. If it's something that you heard on a call, something you've seen on a call, maybe some places you don't want to go to, some places you shouldn't be, you're thinking suicide, whatever it is, there's help out there, and this is the place to get it. Give them a call. And they'll work you through it, and they'll get you the proper help. That's
they will direct you in the right direction. And
1-800-COP-LINE. So back to the show.
Skylar, did you have anything? I see you.
No, not right this second. It'll come to me.
So during the break, I asked Podfather and Matt if Matt can, if you don't mind telling us some funny stories that calls in, but Matt went and said, I have some stories about the cemetery. We all know out here that the Podfather is always in the cemetery. That's his go-to place, his meditation place. And so we want to hear a story about the Podfather in the cemetery from another person.
So, I mean, like Mike had said in the beginning of the show, we met through, both being elected officials here in the town of Dracut. And, it's funny, when I got into politics, it always said, one of my biggest things was I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to work for the people and do the best job I can. And one of the best things that came out of being an elected official, and you don't hear that from a lot of people, is the friendship I have with Mike. I can't say enough stuff, good stuff about Mike. He's just an amazing guy. And, I'm truly blessed that I can call him a friend. And, but enough with the sappy stuff. So, listen, I am I just gotten elected, super green when it comes to politics and things like that. So I call him up and say, hey, I got some questions for you. He's like, all right, meet me in the cemetery. I was like, whoa. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, just meet me in a cemetery. I was like, okay, what cemetery? So he tells me the cemetery. And, whatever. I go pulling in there, and there he is. He's got the window down. He's smoking a cigar. And he's like, what are your questions? And I'm like, this is so weird. I'm like, I looked at him, I go, you're not going to do anything to me, are you? And he just starts laughing. He goes, and I didn't know if this is, I swear, it was like something out of like The Sopranos or like, oh yeah, just go to the cemetery, like whatever. But it was funny because anytime, if I couldn't get a hold of him, just drive to the cemetery. Mike Miles, he'll be at the cemetery. And you just pull in, and he just, like I said, he'll be sitting there with his old dog and smoking a cigar, and you pull up, and he's like, "What's up?" I'm like, "Oh."
He's in meditation form.
But it was absolutely. I'm telling you, the first time he's like, "Just go to the cemetery," and I remember telling my father, I'm like, "Mike wants me." He's just go.
Take the weapon.
Yeah, I'm like, he's like, "Just go. It's fine." He's like, "He's not gonna kill you." I'm like, what? I'm like, "Okay, whatever."
Oh, that's beautiful, Matthew.
But I'm telling you, it was the best. But I'm honestly, anytime now, where are you? Cemetery. All right, I'll be over.
Still,
It's like nothing now.
I can see him sitting there smoking a cigar at the cemetery. Just bar. Yeah.
I'm telling you, I was, my late 20s, and I'm just like, oh, what? I'm like, cemetery? Like, what is this? I'm like, all right, I'm like, it's whatever. But no, I'm telling you, it was funny. Like, it was good.
Good stuff.
That's good. So we want to know some stories. We know there's bad stories. We know there's stories that don't work out good. We know there's stories that work out great, and 9 times out of 10, that's the way it goes. And the story, it's you help a lot of people. Yeah. You're the beginning of helping a lot of people, and we thank you for that. And the story I told earlier about the dispatcher, I didn't mean that in any bad ways.
No,
I just did not understand.
Right, absolutely.
I don't understand that. And then when that woman told her story, 2 women up there told their story, again, I had a whole new kind of a respect for dispatchers, and we help a lot of dispatchers now at Genesis House. But there has to be some funny, his pants are down, or his underwear is on his head, he's wearing a jock strap on. Well, that's that could have been the Super Bowl fucking thing. How many calls you get on the Super Bowl for jock straps on your head? But anyways. But what's some stories?
Some of the weirdest things you hear, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I don't think we have enough time. Like, you'd be amazed at during the holidays.
Oh yeah.
Call in, like older people will call in because they burnt their turkey. They don't know what to do, and they're looking at us, or some people that have never cooked before.
Right.
Entertain their families. They actually call 911. I'm like, how the hell do I cook this turkey?
Matt used to be a chef too.
I was. So, like, if you're lucky enough to get me, hell, I'll walk them through the whole process for free. Like, I'll tell them what seasonings to put on and everything like that.
Good.
That's real human service right there. I love it.
It is.
But then you'll get those, like weird, strange. Like somebody's significant other will come home and they'll just find them in this just awkward position that they got stuck in. You're sitting there and you're like, say that again? And then in your mind, like you're thinking, you're like, all right, so am I going to send the cops, the firefighters, and ambulance? You're like, oh, and I'm sending everybody.
One of each.
Oh, yeah, like you're getting the whole gamut. Like when they're like, listen.
Everybody has to see this one.
Oh, yeah. They're like, we just need help. You're like, oh, no. You're going to get some help. You're going to send everybody. Like everybody's going, and then you know what? We're all going to talk about it later on.
Yeah.
Like, was this actually what happened? Like, was he stuck in that? Like, oh, yeah, he was. Yeah. I mean, like I said, some of the, the humorous things, it weighs out like the bad stuff that we have.
Yeah,
you have to laugh because
silver lining.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Lining, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
and like there is really like, like you think you've heard everything? Absolutely not. In my 10 years, I can hang up a phone sometimes. I'm like, well, that was new. And I'm like, I was like, I never thought a human being could do that, but
and it's funny, I'm cracking up so bad because my brother did this for years, so I've heard tons of stories. So I'm just looking at like, I can totally relate. Yeah, my brothers did this for years, so in South Jersey near Philly. So I've heard so many stories over the years. You guys do a lot of good service.
Yeah, you'll get like the person working next to you, like your partner, and they're looking at you like, and they're writing stuff like, did they really say that? Like, like ask this question. I'm like, all right.
So I like this because there is a human side to all this.
Good, yeah.
And you guys are just like police officers. You guys are human beings. You have to kind of laugh when you can, because that next call can be a really bad call,
right.
Absolutely.
And that I like this humor side of it. I like this understanding that you guys are human beings behind this. It's wonderful.
When I was in graduate school, I was working on the desk, and it was close to the communications room before they built that beautiful facility they have now. and there was a certain dispatcher who I adore, and you adore her too. And she was just so sharp, and just her humor, just a wonderful girl. Always remembered everyone's birthday, and she was a special police officer in the town, and she never even talked about it. Like, she was just a real humble girl, but she would come out with some of the best stories, and she was writing them down, and she would save them. And then after a while, she would, like, kind of from memory, you know, come and show you something that would be so, you'd be crying, you'd be almost peeing yourself laughing, you know, because the way she saw it on the perspective, you know, good stuff, good stuff.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there's a lot of trauma there too, and and it's good that, you know, we have all these. This is why we do what we do with Matthew. We have all these numbers. We do this show. We do a show on recovery, which is entirely different, Friends in Recovery. But this show is definitely to help people, you know, with their stress, anxiety. You know, but it's good to laugh too, because this has been great.
Yeah,
oh, it absolutely has. And I think like what you guys are doing, that's good stuff. That's all awesome, because like you said, I mean, you know, like these guys and girls, you know, in communication with me, and then the guys and girls on the street, whether you're a cop, you're a firefighter, or you're an EMT, like you go and see and deal with stuff that nobody should have to. Like it just, you shouldn't have to do that. So there should be an outlet, you know, for everybody just to go vent or something like that, because
is there something in place for you guys to do that? Like, can you call somebody when you hear a bad call? Is there a debriefing, or is there somebody that can do that? I'm guessing there is, right? Is there something for you guys set up?
You know, through the city, there's it's called the EAP program, the Employee Assistance Program, and you know, people can access that if they have to. Mm-hmm. You know, if they do need some help. I mean, other than that, you know, really, that's pretty much it. Okay. Like sometimes if there's something really, really bad that happens, people will get together and, you know, just talk about it. If somebody needs, you know, further discussion or something like that, you know, they'll try and get that for them.
Debriefings and defusings and things like that. And, you know, I've been to bad fires, bad car accidents, and, you know, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And I think sounds kind of cavalier, but I think a lot of cops and firemen just learn to take it, you know, like, I'm not saying it doesn't bother everyone.
Yes, that's what I was going to say, is that they're sometimes too humble. They don't reach out for help. Because I know my brother is like that, and you have to kind of pound them sometimes, like, Kev, talk, you know.
But it's always good, even for those people that really don't. I had a cop come in this office, say he shot a guy, dead, and we talked, and he's like, I'm fine. He said, I was trained. He'd only been on the force 3 years. He said, I was trained. If someone comes at me with a dangerous weapon, in this case, a knife, a very sharp knife, if he doesn't stop, you have to shoot. And this was all recorded and everything. And honestly, I believed every word he said. He didn't seem the least bit upset, but doesn't mean that the next person's not going to happen. But I'm really glad we have someone like you in there. You are the lead dispatcher, and you know, you can tell just by the way he's talking. Yeah. You know, your common sense is there, but you are so good with people. You know people so well.
But the whole thing I got from you, Matt, is that you take care of yourself mentally, physically, the whole 9 yards. That's how I got from you. And I don't even know you. I just met you on here. And I can see that if there is a problem or something goes wrong or whatever, you really do take care of yourself. And that's so important, especially to first responders. And I admire that in you. And, you know, that's great that you're worrying about your mental health and your well-being too.
Well, I mean, I try to tell, like, you know, all the guys and girls that I train, especially like, you know, like the newer dispatch, like that invisible box can only get so full, you know, and that sometimes if you have to, it's not, you know, maybe there was a stigma like, you know, 20, 30 years ago. But now, like, once that box starts to overflow, and if you need to, like Mike said, there are some people that they just deal with it. Like, you know, once the ship's over and nothing carries over, and it's, you know, then you start your next day. Like there's no stigma anymore to if somebody needs to seek help. Like I said, that little the imaginary box, like if it gets too full, like that, it's okay. It's not a bad thing anymore. Like it's okay
going to break open.
You know, call somebody, whatever.
Yeah.
Listen, Matt. I don't want anyone to get in touch with you needlessly, but if anybody watches this podcast and you want to get in touch with Matthew, you can contact me, the podfather, at 746-1717. I'll make sure that Matt Sheehan gets your message, and whatever you and him talk about will be between you and him.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I don't know. Anyone?
Also, well, email, you can send an email to help@friendsandrecoverypodcast.com, and we'll make sure that we get that out to Matt also. The important part is that we're reaching out to people, that, we're reaching out to our own kind, the dispatcher, first responder. Somebody listening on this show may have heard something that you said and want to talk to you about it, your humor part of it, maybe, how you deal with that. You said, I leave it at the door. I like that. I leave it at the threshold. Not a lot of people do that. Even a normal job, not a lot of people leave that at the threshold. That is very commendable. I applaud you on that.
One of the biggest things, especially in this line of work, is whatever's going on in your life outside of whatever your center is or whatever, that stays on one side of the door. And again, your 8 hours or your 12 hours, that stays on that side of the door. Mm-hmm. So nothing comes intercrossed or interchanged or anything like that.
Yeah, that's good.
Matt really walks the walk. I'm telling you, he's a very talented kid. Hey, listen, I'll see you at the cemetery in a couple weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I never.
I'm telling you, I've never sweat. Like, I was just like, what are we like? What? Like, no. Like, why is this happening to me? Like, I was on such like a winning high. Like, oh, I just got elected, and I'm like, now this guy went to the cemetery.
Now I'm getting murdered.
Like, literally, when I was pulling up, I was making sure I didn't see two things in his passenger seat: lime and a shovel. Okay. Like, if Mike would have got out of the car with a cigar and a bag of lime, we're like, nope. Like, I would have backed up so fast.
I love it.
We'll have breakfast next week and we'll chat.
Oh man, absolutely. You're the best.
So Matt, we have this alumni that actually opened up the Greater Bridge Club of Lowell. Oh, yeah. And that's so I just wanted to plug, in case you didn't know about it, he has a clubhouse in Lowell he opened. And that's awesome because not every town is accepting of that. And Lowell was very, welcoming about it. And he opened up a clubhouse for like people to go to have support. So
Matt knows Bob Cox very well.
Okay, good.
Bob was a public official in Drake as well.
Wow, okay.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I like love Lowell, and I've never been there.
I'm so glad you're doing that, Skylar. I just talked to Bob this morning, actually.
Yeah, good.
I love him. Yes.
He loves all you guys too.
Yeah. Well, Podfather, great show, great guest. Great show. Matt, thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you for.
I'm gonna be laughing later, thinking about any cemetery I pass by. I'm gonna laugh.
I told you, every time you drive past the cemetery, like I get a twinge now. I'm like, nope.
The visual.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's good stuff.
I love it. Thank you guys for making me laugh today.
Great show.
Yeah,
really, as usual. And any closing words?
I'm good.
Skylar,
that was fabulous. I really appreciate the laugh. That was great.
Matt's great. I'm gonna have him on again.
Absolutely.
Maybe in May.
Anytime you want.
And we'll talk about FirstNet, AT&T, and everything. Yeah. So, everybody, answering the call, the First Responders Podcast, sponsored by FirstNet, built by AT&T, and stay safe.
Stay safe, everybody.
Stay safe.
That concludes this episode of Answering the Call, the First Responders Podcast. Thanks to Genesis House, FirstNet, built with AT&T, for supporting those on the path to recovery and keeping this valuable resource free for all our friends in recovery. Follow us on Facebook for past shows and updates, and enjoy free access to twice daily support meetings. Brought to you by Genesis House and the Friends in Recovery. If you can't get enough of Mike, the Podfather, Jersey Ed, and Skylar, you can catch them on Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast. Available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and GenesisHouse.net.